Chapter 1 Roots of a Warrior. The moment the front door hissed shut, the hum of the security seals faded, and the atmosphere of the Ness Odo home shifted from quiet anticipation to the disciplined calm of a family raised under command. The air itself seemed to straighten its posture. Abby moved first, stepping forward with a breath that carried both exhaustion and relief. Her mother, Kate Odo, still smelled faintly of machine oil and jasmine tea, a strange but comforting scent of intellect and steel. Her father, Masaharu, stood tall in a simple charcoal suit, posture perfect even in retirement. Behind her, Kyle followed, his boots echoing on the metal floor plates before he softened his stance and offered firm handshakes that turned into genuine hugs. "Thank you both for coming," Abby said, releasing a breath that had been held all day. "We wouldn't trust Bash and Emily with anyone else." Kate smirked and adjusted the strap of the satchel slung across her shoulder, her eyes flicking toward Kyle with mock suspicion. "Nonsense. Children like yours are easier to manage than junior officers. Besides," she said with that razor-dry wit Abby had inherited, "someone needs to keep your husband from performing a tactical acquisition of the hors d'oeuvres table." Kyle chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "You're not wrong. This gala will be the longest debrief of my life. But after 12 years, the executioners deserve the send-off. Some are retiring from the GMA. The rest of us will train the next generation. My last mission as a field commander is to learn how to sit still." Masaharu's mouth curved into a knowing half-smile. "Teaching is the hardest command. It's when you realize the next soldiers won't fight the same wars you did." The words hung in the air for a moment, respectful silence between generations who understood sacrifice by instinct. Then the quiet broke. "Grandpa, you've got to see this." Bash's voice cracked with excitement as he sprinted down the hallway, his boots barely touching the floor. He skidded to a stop in front of Masaharu, eyes bright, posture sharp but vibrating with unrestrained energy. "I finally did it," he said, already grabbing his grandfather's sleeve. "I figured out how to throw and balance materials without losing trajectory. You said it was about feeling the object's rhythm, not fighting it, and I can do it now. You've got to see." Masaharu's brows lifted, the faintest ghost of a smile tugging at his lips. "Unbalanced projectiles, HM. That's not a lesson I expected you to ask about again so soon." "It's not just practice," Bash insisted, words tumbling out as fast as his thoughts. "I used a broken ceramic plate, a metal bolt, even one of Mom's old training discs. They all fly different. You can feel the weight shift if you catch it mid-spin. Watch, I'll show you." The boy tugged harder, his enthusiasm practically dragging the older man down the corridor. Masaharu chuckled quietly, letting himself be led. "That's a lesson your mother never quite perfected until she was nearly grown," he said, following with measured steps. "She used to call it throwing chaos with control. Took her years to learn the difference." Bash grinned over his shoulder. "Then I'll learn it faster." The training deck door slid open with a hiss, revealing the circular chamber below, mats lining the floor, targets scattered across varying distances, and an array of mismatched scrap objects on a workbench. Bash raced ahead, scooping up a jagged piece of ceramic, the edge still sharp from its fracture. Masaharu descended slowly, eyes narrowing as the boy centered himself at the throw line. Bash inhaled, shifting his weight, fingers flexing just enough to feel the uneven pull of the shard. Then, with a snap of his wrist, the object spun through the air, its flight wobbling only once before embedding dead center into the distant target. The sound of impact echoed like applause. Masaharu's gaze followed the ceramic, then returned to his grandson, who was already grinning ear to ear. "Not bad," he said softly. "You compensated for imbalance by instinct." "I didn't even think about it," Bash said, chest rising with pride. "It just felt right this time." Masaharu nodded once, that same quiet approval Abi had known as a child. "Good. That means you're learning to listen to the weapon instead of forcing it to obey you." Bash lit up at the praise, the kind that only came when he truly earned it. Masaharu's approval lingered in the air, but Bash was already scanning the table for another object, a jagged metal gear, a fractured composite tile, anything that might test him. "Don't push it," Masaharu said mildly, reading his grandson's intent. "One perfect throw is worth 100 reckless ones." Bash sighed but obeyed, though his hand still twitched with restless energy. "I just wanted to show Mom when she gets back. She always says Grandpa taught her this, but she never said how." Masaharu's chuckle was low and knowing. "Your mother learned through broken plates and bruised pride. You're getting off easy." The older man reached out and tousled the boy's hair, then gestured toward the upper level. "Come on, your parents are leaving soon." Bash fell and stepped beside him as they ascended the stairs, still talking about release points and hand rotation angles. The moment they re-entered the main hall, the sound of conversation and laughter returned. Kyle stood near the door, fastening his dress uniform jacket. When he spotted his son, He straightened and raised his voice just then. Ought to carry down the corridor. Vash! The boy froze mid-step, instinctively snapping to attention. Kyle pointed a gloved finger. No sparring while we're gone. At it. Vash's mouth opened like he might argue, then closed again under his mother's raised brow. Yes, sir, he said, reluctantly. Kyle smirked. Good answer. He turned toward Kate with a mock sigh. He started catching me off guard during drills. Kid doesn't know when to pull his punches. I'm starting to think I need armor just to practice with him. Kate's laugh was soft but genuine. If he's besting you already, Commander, maybe the problem isn't his strength. Kyle gave her a half smile, the kind that suggested both amusement and quiet pride. Yeah, well, that's the point, isn't it? Abby appeared beside him then. Sly, ding her arm into his. He gets that from both of us, she said with a knowing grin, discipline with a dangerous side. Kyle chuckled, shaking his head. Let's just hope he learns restraint faster than I did. Kate's answering smirk was sharp enough to cut Alloy. He's a Ness and an Odo. Restraint might be too much to hope for. As the training deck sealed behind them, Abby shook her head and laughed softly. He's going to wear Dad out before dinner. Kate crossed her arms, amusement tugging at her lips. Nonsense. That boy's the first person to make Masaharu's blood pressure rise in 10 years. It's good for him. Before Abby could answer, a flash of motion darted past them, a blur of messy hair and mismatched socks. Grandma Kate, Emily, 6 years old and full of determination, clutch. She had a small circuit board made of mismatched parts. Wires poked out at odd angles, a few tiny lights flickering uncertainly as she held it high like a trophy. Look what I made, she exclaimed, grinning from ear to ear. It's supposed to track how fast I throw things, but it keeps freezing when I try it on all my toys at once. Can you help me fix it? Kate crouched down, inspecting the board with the same seriousness she'd use on military-grade tech. You built this yourself? She asked, half in disbelief, half in admiration. I found the pieces in the workshop, Emily said proudly, and I used Grandpa's old com battery. Don't worry, I didn't shock myself this time, but I think it's what's the word? Too much power all at once. Kate's eyes softened. Signal interference. Happens to the best of us. Emily blinked up at her. So it's fixable? Kate smiled. Everything's fixable if you take your time. Come on, we'll see what it wants to do before dinner. Emily let out a delighted squeal and grabbed her grandmother's hand, practically skipping as she led her toward the lab. Abby watched them go, the corners of her mouth turning up. She's 6 going on scientist, she murmured. Kyle wrapped an arm around her shoulders. She's going to outbuild both of them before she hits middle school. Abby leaned into him, eyes following the corridor where her daughter had disappeared. I just hope she remembers to eat dinner before building her next experiment. Kyle chuckled. She's a Nodo. I'm not sure she'll ever stop tinkering. The home's lights dimmed slightly. Why as the evening cycle began, the quiet hum of systems wrapping the house in a low, steady rhythm. Abby's reflection shimmered in the polished alloy while a soldier-turned-mother, still standing at attention even in moments of peace. Kyle's voice softened. You sure you're up for tonight? She nodded. It's not just about you, Kyle. It's for all of them a farewell they deserve. Before he could answer, the front door chimed, 3 sharp, official knocks. Kyle straightened his tie instinctively and headed for the entryway. Even at home, he moved like a man reporting for duty. Sergeant Commander Spencer, tall and broad-shouldered, stood slightly to the side out of habit, still deferential despite years of shared command. Beside him was General Drake, his father, newly promoted and wearing the weight of leadership like a second uniform. At his side, Leslie, calm and poised, softened the rigidity of the moment with a warm, practiced smile. Commander Ness, Spencer said with a quick grin. Ready for your final formation? Kyle returned the handshake firmly. Always, he replied, though his tone carried a hint of irony. Abby appeared behind him, greeting Leslie with a light hug. Thank you for coming, she said, her voice full of genuine warmth. I'm glad you're both here. Leslie's smile widened. Wouldn't miss it. I'm just not sure what's more impressive, the end of an era or the fact that you convinced your husband to wear a tie. Abby laughed. Don't give him an excuse to take it off. Wouldn't dream of it, Kyle said dryly, though a smile tugged at his lips. The group stepped into the evening together, the crisp night air humming faintly with the sounds of shuttle traffic from the nearby base. Streetlights lined the path in disciplined formation, their cool white glow reflecting off metal walkways that curved toward the central complex of design, equal parts beauty and control. Masaharu and Kate watched from the doorway as the group departed. Kate rested a hand on her husband's arm. Hard to believe they are the same age we were when you left for the Southern campaign. Masaharu gave a low hum of agreement, his eyes fixed on his daughter's silhouette as it disappeared down the path. The difference is, he said quietly, we thought we had time. The ride to the gala was quiet but heavy with meaning. Through the tinted transport windows, The basin reached outward, a sea of hangars, training fields, and shuttle pads bathed in blue light. The convoy passed under security gates flanked by banners bearing the insignia of the Global Military Alliance, their metallic edges glinting like blades under the floodlights. General Drake broke the silence first. "They've gathered every high-ranking officer within 5 sectors for this event," he said, adjusting the silver clasp on his collar. "You'll be speaking after the Prime Delegate." Kyle gave a humorless chuckle. "Great. Nothing like following a politician to remind everyone why soldiers don't make speeches." Spencer smirked. "You say that now, but half the people in that hall will remember your words long after the delegate's forgotten theirs." "Maybe," Kyle said, "or they'll just remember the wine." Leslie leaned forward slightly, resting a gloved hand on her husband's arm. "You've earned this, Kyle. All of you have. The executioners deserve a night to breathe." He nodded once, expression softening. "We'd all do." The reception hall rose from the base's central district like a monument of glass and stone. Inside, muted gold panels framed high ceilings strung with crystal lights that caught the faint shimmer of the planetary skyline beyond. Uniformed officers and officials moved in careful choreography, laughter measured, conversation restrained. The air was equal parts pride and politics. Kyle adjusted his jacket and scanned the crowd. Familiar faces, soldiers, commanders, even a few scientists mingled among polished diplomats and representatives of the Global Alliance Council. At the far end of the hall, a raised dais waited beneath a massive hollow banner, "The Executioners," in honor of 12 years of service. He exhaled slowly. "Never thought I'd see that name in gold lettering." Spencer followed his gaze. "You earned it. Every one of you." A waiter drifted past with a tray of crystalline glasses. Kyle plucked one off, swirling the liquid absently. "Feels strange. We spent years pretending this unit didn't exist, and now they are printing commemorative napkins." Spencer chuckled under his breath. "The world loves its heroes, even when it wasn't supposed to know them." As speeches began, the noise settled into polite stillness. Dignitaries took the stage one by one, the Prime Delegate, a council representative, and finally, a defense minister whose words carried the smooth cadence of political rehearsal. They spoke of unseen battles, silent victories, and the peace secured by men and women whose names would never grace public record. They spoke of the executioners like myth, a necessary shadow cast by civilization's light. Abby listened from the front table, hands folded neatly in her lap. Pride warmed her chest, but beneath it pulsed a familiar tension, the kind she hadn't felt since deployment. Something about the air in the hall felt too clean, too perfect. Her husband's name was announced. Kyle rose. Applause followed, respectful, restrained, the kind given to soldiers whose service transcended recognition. He walked to the podium, his steps steady, his expression composed. "Good evening," he began, his voice carrying easily through the hall. "When we started this unit 12 years ago, none of us expected to make it to a retirement party. We expected to burn out, fade away, or be buried under classified dirt where no one could find us." A few scattered chuckles rippled through the crowd. "But somehow," Kyle continued, "we're here, alive, together." He paused, glancing toward the long table where the remaining executioner sat. "Every mission we took blurred the line between bravery and survival. We operated where maps ended, where diplomacy failed, and where the world pretended not to look. I'm standing here today because 5 others refused to fall when I did." A murmur of appreciation passed through the soldiers in attendance. Then, a flicker of mischief touched his eyes. "We've been to every corner of the world, jungles, deserts, ruins buried in snow. Every mission imaginable." He let the pause stretch. "Except the Arctic North, investigating alien equipment that couldn't be described." Laughter broke across the hall like a wave. Almost everyone laughed, but at the head table, General Drake's hand froze around his glass. Abby's smile faltered. Kyle kept his expression smooth, his voice steady. "It's been the honor of my life leading this team. I'm proud of every one of you and grateful we get to celebrate this together, rather than at a memorial. To the executioners." He raised his glass. The applause was thunderous. As the last echoes of applause faded, the hall exhaled. Music rose from hidden speakers, soft strings layered over the low thrum of conversation. The tension of ceremony melted into clinking glasses and laughter. Kyle stepped away from the stage, the spotlight's glare still ghosting his vision. He smiled, exchanged handshakes, nodded through congratulations he barely heard. Around him, uniforms loosened, medals caught the light, and officers who had faced death without blinking suddenly looked awkward in celebration. At a nearby table, Abby watched her husband weave through the crowd. Pride and love softened her features, but her stomach refused to settle. She'd seen that glint in his eye, the one that usually preceded trouble. General Drake didn't bother with pride. He moved with deliberate calm, his expression carved from restraint, until he reached the corner of the hall where the shadows thinned against the polished glass wall. "Kyle, the sink." A word carried more authority than a shout. Kyle turned, still holding a drink, posture relaxed. "General." Drake's eyes were hard steel. "What in hell possessed you to mention that mission?" Kyle tilted his head, tone easy. "It was a joke." The crowd laughed. "This isn't about laughs," Drake hissed, stepping closer. "That operation is sealed above top-tier clearance. You don't joke about it. Not ever." Kyle took a slow sip, the faint smile never leaving his face. "If I'd said anything real, you'd have pulled me off stage yourself. Everyone thought it was a story about frostbite and bad coffee. You're overreacting." Drake's jaw tightened. "Overreacting?" His voice dropped lower. Words waited. "You weren't the only one who walked away from that site. We monitored signals their energy, signatures that didn't die when the mission ended. There are people still asking what we brought back." Kyle's expression faltered for the first time, the faintest crack in his confident mask. "That was 15 years ago." Drake's gaze flicked toward the massive windows overlooking the base. "And some things don't stay buried, Commander." For a long moment, the hum of the gala filled the silence between them. Then Drake straightened, smoothing his jacket as if sealing the conversation back under control. "Enjoy your evening." This conversation never happened. He turned and disappeared into the crowd. Kyle stood there a moment longer, the laughter and music pressing around him like static. The reflection in the glass showed a man trying to look calm, but behind his eyes something old had stirred, something that remembered the sound of frozen wind and an impossible light buried beneath it. Abby's hand touched his arm gently. "Everything okay?" He blinked and turned toward her, his practiced smile returning. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" He glanced back at the window, the stars faint beyond the atmosphere, distant and cold. "About what comes next." Outside, a shuttle banked over the base, its thrusters cutting briefly through the night. For a heartbeat, the sound resembled something else deeper, older, almost alive. Then it was gone. The music swelled again, and the party continued as if nothing had changed. But somewhere far beyond the light of that hall, something heard. "Thank you for reading this chapter. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving a thumbs up, leaving a positive review or a comment. It truly helps a debut author like myself. As this is my first novel, I am still learning, and I would love to hear your constructive feedback to help me improve. I'll do my best to reply to your comments." Rundock Chapter 2, The Fracture Point. The gale was in full, vibrant swing. Deep blue and gold light rippled across the reception hall, refracting through suspended glass fixtures that hung like frozen comets. The music had shifted to a pulsing rhythm that pushed gently against the chest, elegant enough for officers, steady enough for soldiers. Laughter rose in small bursts, catching the glimmer of polished uniforms and jeweled gowns. Kyle stood beside Abby near the center of it all, a glass of synthesize, champagne in hand. The tightness in his shoulders had finally eased. He'd survived the speech, the generals, and the politics. For the first time in years, he let himself exhale. Abby leaned closer. "You did well," she murmured. Kyle's grin tilted sideways. "I didn't get court-martialed, so I'll take that as a win. You even made them laugh," she teased. "Yeah," he said, clinking her glass. "That's what worries me." They both laughed, the kind of laugh that comes only when you've spent too long pretending not to be tired. The band struck a brighter note. Dancers spilled onto the floor, and the celebration grew louder, looser, human again. No one noticed the faint vibration that ran beneath the hall like a distant heartbeat. 4 stories beneath the Northern Command hub, the mood was in, anything but celebratory. Inside Lab A9, 2 scientists stared at a holo display that painted their faces in shifting hues of orange and blue. "Doctor." Yara Mendez leaned forward until her nose nearly touched the data stream. "That can't be right," she whispered, the thermal fluxes climbing through the containment threshold. Her partner, Dr. Ren Tao, adjusted the scale and felt his stomach drop. The circular platform they'd spent a decade studying pulse red in the schematic, each feet brighter than the last. 2 massive black pillars flanked it, joining at a single glowing capstone like an archway waiting for purpose. The capstone flared. The floor trembled. A controlled seismic pulse erupted outward, not an explosion, but a single, focused thrum that rolled through the rock and vanish. The overhead lights flickered as red sigils strobed across the walls. Yara's headset screeched with static. "Magnitude 5.3. Origin depth matches the artifact core." Ren shouted back. "Reactor backup engaged. External systems are fine. Containment holding for now." "Not for long," she said, voice tight. "It's harmonic. Look at the waveform, that's intent, not accident." Another pulse hit. The lab shivered. "Every 60 seconds," Ren said. "It's cycling." Like she slammed the emergency protocol flooding the room in crimson light. Seal every corridor and patch me through to command. The Wallcom blink connection failed. Signal interference, Ren muttered. The field's jamming transmissions. Yara's hands trembled as she stared at the display. Then whatever's waking, up down here doesn't want to be interrupted. Above, the gala thundered on. The crystal floor panels subtly quivered with each bass note. No one realized some of the tremors weren't part of the music. Kyle was laughing at a story Spencer was telling about their time at the GMA competition when a faint shudder rippled through the drink in his hand. He glanced down, bubbles rising unevenly, then dismissed it. Probably the sound system. Abby noticed the same ripple in her glass and frowned. You feel that? Just the bass, Kyle said, though something in his tone betrayed the lie. She tilted her head. You're hearing it too. He smiled and deflected. Old instincts. They twitch at everything. She let it go, but his eyes kept flicking toward the floor. Across the residential district, the world was far quieter. Masaharu Oto sat in the living room, a heavy book open across his lap. The lamplight painted soft gold across the walls, and for the first time in months, he allowed himself a moment of genuine peace. Beside him, Kate scrolled through a digital journal, her expression serene. Then the floor rippled, not a quake, a pulse. Masaharu felt it travel up through the soles of his feet, along his spine, and into the back of his skull. His fingers went still on the page. He closed the book without a sound. Kate, he said quietly, did you feel that? She looked up. A tremor. The monitors didn't. That wasn't a tremor. He interrupted. Already standing. It was measured. He stepped to the window, pressing one palm against the glass. Another pulse rolled through. Exact. TLY 60 seconds after the first. The house creaked. The ceiling light swayed once, then steadied. Masaharu turned toward the north. In the distance, over the ridge of the base, the air shimmered faintly, a distortion like heat above a road. He moved outside. The chill air bit against his skin. The pulse came again, rising through the pavement like a heartbeat. The shimmer grew brighter, expanding in slow, perfect rings until it became a disk suspended high above the horizon. Kate's voice carried from the doorway. Masaharu, he didn't turn. Keep the children inside. What is it? Something deliberate. The glow intensified, warping the starlight. Within the disk, the sky bent inward, a dark well that swallowed its own light. Lightning filaments flickered along its rim, not white blue, ghost blue, as if they drew power from something beyond sight. Masaharu's eyes stayed locked on the northern horizon. The shimmer above the base had deepened a strange, living distortion that rippled like heat but pulsed like machinery. Another shockwave rolled through the ground, steady and deliberate. The vibration climbed through his shoes and into his chest, too controlled, too rhythmic to be a natural quake. Kate joined him on the walkway despite his warning, her robe clutched tightly against the chill. It's beautiful, she whispered, eyes wide at the faint, spiraling light above the skyline. Masaharu didn't answer at first. His gaze tracked the glow, the frequency of its flicker, the way the air around it seemed to bend. His mind moved faster than his words, calculating, comparing, testing memory against logic. Finally, he said quietly, it's wrong. The energy is climbing. It's resonant. Resonant, he nodded slightly. The pulses in the ground, they are matching it. Whatever's up there is syncing with something below. Kate frowned, taking a step closer. How can you know that just by looking? Masaharu's jaw tightened. Because I can feel the rhythm in my chest, not my ears. It's deliberate, it's communicating. A third pulse hit, harder this time. Windows rattled. Street lamps flickered, their halos shrinking to dull amber glows. A few neighbors stepped outside, peering around with the hesitant confusion of people who can sense danger without understanding it. Masaharu didn't speak. His mind raced through fragmented equations, resonance harmonics, free, NCY coupling, controlled seismic propagation. Every instinct and memory from his years of training told him the same thing. This wasn't random. He looked skyward again. The distortion had grown into a full circle of warped light, its center impossibly dark. The surrounding clouds were being drawn inward, forming a slow spiral that radiated outward like a wound in the sky. Kate whispered, Masaharu, what is it? He shook his head slowly, voice low and certain. Something deliberate, something being opened. The next pulse cracked through the concrete with enough force to split a driveway. Across the neighborhood, alarms began to chirp soft, confused warnings triggered by structural sensors that didn't understand what they were detecting. A deep groan echoed from beneath the ground, as if the earth itself were under strain. Masaharu's breath caught. It's stabilizing. What is the field? He said, almost to himself. The oscillations balancing that shouldn't be possible without he stopped. The circle in the sky flared brilliant white, then deepened into an impossible void rimmed with light. A faint wind swept through the street, carrying static that made the air taste like iron. Then came the sound of deep, thrumming roar that wasn't quite sound at all. It resonated in the bones, inside the ribs, like an echo of something vast remembering how to speak. Masaharu's fingers curled unconsciously at his sides. His mind cataloged every detail even as his instincts screamed to move, to protect, to run. But his eyes stayed fixed on the impossible phenomenon above E-base. Within the circle, jades flickered shadows against the darkness, vaguely human, but they weren't. Down in Lab A9, chaos reigned. Yara gripped the table as another quake hurled tools and tablets to the floor. Sparks cascaded from the ceiling conduits, the containment fields collapsing. Ren shouted. It wasn't meant to contain, it was meant to channel. She yelled back. We've been powering this thing for years without realizing it. Then shut it down. I can't. It's drawing from the planet's magnetic grid. She stabbed the manual override. The lights went dead then. Impossibly. The glowing pillars flared brighter. The energy signature surged past the meter's maximum range. Masaharu stumbled as the last, strongest pulse hit. The sky above him tore apart in a ring of searing light. The portal flared wide 20 meters, then 50, a perfect circle of luminous energy with a void heart. The air thundered as the vacuum equalized, drawing a gust strong enough to rip leaves from trees. Within that darkness, something enormous shifted. A beam of pale energy speared downward, striking the exact coordinates of the underground lab. For one blinding instant, the 2 points, the portal in the sky and the platform below, connected like magnets meeting through time and space. The night turned white. When the light faded, a low fog rolled across the district. Alarms howled from distant towers. Power grids cascaded offline in waves, leaving the base shrouded in emergency red. Masaharu stood motionless in the haze, heart pounding. The air smelled of ozone and burnt metal. He could taste electricity. Kate's voice broke through the ringing in his ears. Masaharu, what was that? He looked at her, every instinct screaming the same truth he didn't want to say. A door. Above them. The circle still burned, stable now, alive, whispering faint echoes that weren't made of sound. Something was coming through. Thank you for reading this chapter. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving a thumbs up, leaving a positive review or a comment. It truly helps a debut author like myself. As this is my first novel, I am still learning, and I would love to hear your constructive feedback to help me improve. I'll do my best to reply to your comments. Rundock Chapter 3, Threshold of Conflict. The tremor hit like a heartbeat through the F. Or, for a moment, the gala crowd mistook it for the bass line of the orchestra, another deep synthetic note reverberating through the glass panels beneath their feet. But Kyle felt the difference instantly. The sound was wrong, too clean, too rhythmic. That's not the bass, Abby said sharply beside him, her soldier's instincts cutting through the laughter and music. Kyle's grip tightened around her arm. No, he agreed, scanning the chandeliers overhead. Dust motes drifted downward, small, precise vibrations aligning with the same unnatural rhythm. Another pulse. Then another. Across the room, General Drake had already gone still. The warmth and ceremony of the evening fell away from his face like a mask. His eyes, cold and alert, found Kyle's across the crowd. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His slight hand motion, 2 fingers, and a tilt of the head was enough to signal move. Abby and Kyle followed, slipping through the outer edge of the gathering without drawing attention. The dancers continued to spin, unaware that the crystal beneath them had begun to hum. By the time the trio reached the far wall, the bass alarms began to catch up. Their first tones were confused, slow, almost questioning before rising into full, synchronized wails. The moment they hit the reinforced exit doors, the sound shifted from music to chaos. Outside, the cold night air slammed against them. Across the sprawling military complex, the world had changed. Roughly a mile and a half away, above the northern research quadrant, the sky was tearing itself apart. A luminous circle shimmered high, GH above the horizon, smooth, deliberate, geometric. The center was a hollow void rimmed in pale light, swirling in slow, silent rotation. Clouds twisted around it like a drain. Another seismic pulse rolled through the base, making the ground ripple underfoot. Abby's eyes widened, her voice low but steady. That's coming from underground. Kyle turned toward him, his tone sharp enough to cut the wind. About that platform, he said. You just told me there are people still asking what we brought back. When you say brought back, exactly where's back? Drake's eyes flicked to the luminous disk in the sky. The glow reflected off his uniform's polished insignia as he spoke, his words measured, encrypted, meant for the few who understood. If anything might have been brought back, he sighed, evenly, it would likely be located in a classified lab 4 stories below this very base. He paused, then added coldly, that is, if such a lab exists, and I am not saying one does. Before Kyle could respond, the night exploded in light. A beam of pale energy, impossibly bright, impossibly straight spear downward from the heart of the portal. It struck the ground in the exact quadrant Drake had described. For one blinding instant, the connection between Earth and sky solidified. The air convulsed. The shockwave hit a heartbeat later, lifting dust and debris from the street in a circular pattern. Every soldier on the base felt it in their bones. Alarms blared in overlapping tones, the system unable to identify the threat type. Red light swept across the horizon as automated death. Insect cannons powered on, tracking the sky with mechanical precision but no target to lock. Abby shielded her eyes from the flare. It's hitting the lab. Drake didn't answer. His gaze stayed fixed on the energy column, his expression grim and resigned. It's not hitting it, he said quietly. It's finding it. Far above the planet's atmosphere, unseen by radar or satellite, a single vessel drifted in silent geosynchronous orbit. It was unlike any human craft built not for speed but for endurance. Its hull was layered in dull metallic plates, asymmetrical yet purposeful, with long spines that curved backward like a predatory creature holding its breath. Faint emerald light pulsed along its seams in slow rhythm with the planet below. Inside the command deck, 3 figures stood before a panoramic viewing panel that displayed the glowing world beneath them. They were Spartors. Each stood over 2 meters tall, roughly 7 feet, their bodies built with dense muscle under thick, matte-toned skin. Their proportions were human in silhouette but subtly wrong, torsos broad and balanced, arms too long, hands ending in digits that looked more designed for strength. Their faces were striking, their features symmetrical but their eyes elongated, irises glowing faintly in hues that matched their skin. The one at the forward console, the skin a muted brown with subtle golden undertones, straightened as the reading spiked across his monitor. He spoke in their native tongue, a language of clipped consonants and resonant hums, Kashnathalit. Vastor, Alniditesha. The sound, DS were deep and layered, a combination of vibration and tone more felt than heard. We have found it. Commander, final location confirmed. The dull green Spartor, taller, heavier, his posture radiating command, turned his gaze toward the screen. Report. The muted brown Spartor obeyed instantly. Quantum signature identified. The transporter has reactivated. Its anchor frequency has breached the planetary crust. Coordinates matched the migration path traced from the northern ice shelf. The device has been moved. It now rests directly below our orbital position. The third figure, a dull blue Spartor with luminous markings along her temples, leaned closer to the sensor display. The civilization has built around it. Containment or ignorance? The scout's hands moved over the controls. Perhaps. They lack the knowledge to destroy it. The pulse pattern suggests accidental reactivation triggered by resonance. The commander's gaze darkened. Then the quantum threshold is open. He stepped closer to the viewport, the faint glow from the planet reflecting across the deep ridges of his skin. Prepare the insertion chamber. The blue one hesitated. The planetary field is unstable. A direct descent will expose us before we secure the artifact. Then we descend quickly, the commander said. We recover what was stolen, and we close the breach before their kind understands what they have touched. He turned to the scout, who had already begun inputting coordinates. Portal alignment at orbital vector 173, the scout said. Opening localized gate above the signal. Ground radius stable. Target lock confirmed. Execute. The ship's lower decks came alive with sound deep resonances and metallic clicks as energy conduits powered up. Along the hull's underside, concentric rings began to glow. The faint vibration became a low, harmonic pulse, matching the rhythm of the energy field on the planet below. The commander placed one large hand against the glass, his expression solemn. We have searched the system for 2 decades. The path ends here. The specialist lowered her head slightly. And if the artifact rejects us? In the lower chamber of the ship, the atmosphere shimmered with raw power. The Spartors stood around a circular platform etched with faint, glowing lines that pulsed in rhythm with the portal on the planet below. The scout keyed a series of gestures into the control orb, speaking in his own tongue. Catherick Drainsaw. Alignment stable. Transport window open for 120 seconds. The commander nodded. Team 1 will secure the artifact. No hostilities unless engaged. The humans must not see us until containment is ensured. The specialist raised her chin slightly. And if they do? The commander's eyes glowed faintly. Then the threshold of conflict will begin sooner than planned. They stepped onto the platform. Energy coalesced around them, vertical streams of light forming an angular cocoon. The sound of it was unlike any human machine, more like the vibration of an enormous string being plucked across the fabric of space. The light swallowed them whole. Back on the base, Kyle, Abby, and Dr. Ake stood transfixed as the beam continued to pour down from the sky. The energy struck with such intensity that the air shimmered in waves of heat despite the cold night. Kyle shielded his eyes. That's not a strike. It's transport. Drake didn't argue. Inside, now, they sprinted for the nearest transport shuttle, the ground trembling beneath their feet. Behind them, the portal's light intensified until shadows stretched razor-thin across the base. Miles away, in the quiet residential district, Masaharu watched the same impossible beam pierce the clouds. The vibration under his feet became steady, less chaotic now, as though something vast had locked into place. He didn't know the words for what he was seething, but he understood what it meant. Something had arrived. Thank you for reading this chapter. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving a thumbs up, leaving a positive review or a comment. It truly helps a debut author like myself. As this is my first novel, I am still learning, and I would love to hear your constructive feedback to help me improve. I'll do my best to reply to your comments. Run. Chapter 4. The Spartor. While the white light from the descending beam faded, leaving behind the choking tang of ozone and a low, electric hum that vibrated through the air like a living heartbeat. Kyle, Abby, and General Drake ran hard across the tarmac toward the nearest military shuttle. Around them, spotlights flared to life, cutting sharp beams through the haze. The ground trembled beneath their boots, the aftershocks raw, ling outward from the impact zone and slow, measured pulses steady, unnatural, alive. Abby's voice broke through the rising chaos. That location, she gasped, glancing toward the pillar of energy still visible in the distance. That's in the residential sector. It's close to our home. Drake's response came sharp and flat, the tone of a man already assessing casualties. Laboratory A9 is directly beneath your district, less than a quarter mile. Abby's chest tightened. She toggled her wrist comm, twitching through emergency frequencies. Mom, Dad, static. She tried again, harder. Masaharu, do you copy? Nothing. The comms were dead. Drake reached the shuttle first, yanking open the hatch and climbing into the cockpit. He switched on the secure military uplink and spoke with a precise precision of command. Central Command, this is General Drake. Code red over Laboratory A9. Opponent unknown. Energy signature exceeds any registered category. Assume advanced technology and superior firepower. Bring everything we have. Priority objective, containment. He slammed the console shut and turned back toward the window. 3 seconds later, the world lit red. Sirens screamed across the base. Massive floodlights flicked to life, painting the complex in a haze of emergency crimson. Every outer gate sealed, locking the perimeter. The automated turrets along the command wall pivoted skyward, searching for targets that didn't yet exist. Drake's voice was steady, but the lines around his eyes had deepened. We just declared war against something we don't understand. Abby swallowed hard. Then we'd better learn fast. Kyle fired up the shuttle's engines, the vibration rattling through the frame. Hold on. The craft surged forward, rising off the launch pad and swinging toward the north. Through the cockpit glass, the horizon burned, the portal's light visible even from miles away, a vertical wound in the atmosphere that refused to close. All across the base, soldiers spilled from barracks and armories, gearing up and sprinting toward the drop coordinates. The sky filled with motion troop carriers, drones, and interceptor jets racing into formation. Drake leaned over the console, his jaw tight. We need eyes on that site before it escalates. If it's what I think it is, Kyle cut him off. Then it's already too late. The residential district was unrecognizable. The gentle hum of domestic systems had been replaced by the howl of alarms and the low rumble of shifting earth. The once still night was choked with dust and glowing haze. Masaharu stood outside the ruined remains of the Ness front walkway, the senses alive with a clarity that only came in moments of absolute danger. Every sound, every tremor, every shift in the air told him something new. The light had vanished from the sky, but the damage was clear. A crater 200 meters away where the energy beam had struck. At its center, rising from the scorched earth, stood 3 towering figures. Each was roughly 7 feet tall, their builds massive yet precise, the musculature balanced between power and grace. Their skin reflected the dull, earthy tones of the world around them, muted brown, dull blue, and a deep, matte green that caught the light only in faint glimmers. Masaharu's breath caught. They're not human. He didn't waste time wondering what they were. Kate, he shouted, his voice cutting through the alarm's wail. The children bunker. Now, through the shattered window, he saw her grab Emily's wrist and pull her toward the concealed panel in the floor. Ash was already there, throwing the latch aside with practiced precision. Masaharu turned to follow, but movement drew his eye back to the crater. The dull green one, clearly the leader, gestured toward him. His arm moved in a short, decisive arc. The muted brown Spartor, slightly smaller but no less imposing, stepped forward. His hand rose slowly, palm outward, as if grasping the air itself. The motion as deliberate, ritualistic. Masaharu didn't understand what was happening, but his instincts screamed. Behind him, the ground began to shift. Concrete cracked, earth bulged, and fragments of rock and rebar tore free from the ground, rising upward as if caught in an invisible fist. Masaharu pivoted instantly, his muscles reacting faster than thought. The air around him compressed. He could feel the oncoming wave before it formed. Then, with a sharp thrust of the Spartor's arm, the debris launched forward. A solid mass of stone and metal, easily the size of a small car, hurtled toward him at deadly speed. Masaharu dove sideways, hitting the ground and rolling hard. The projectile slammed into the side of the Ness house with an impact that shook the foundation, tearing a jagged hole through the wall and sending shards of glass and plaster raining down. He scrambled to his feet, chest heaving, and sprinted for the ruined doorway. Inside, Kate and the children were already halfway down the bunker stairs. "Go," he barked. "Seal it." He turned and grabbed 2 pulse rifles from the emergency rack mounted near the entryway. The weapon felt unfamiliar, heavier than the old models he'd trained with, but his hands moved by memory, loading and priming without hesitation. "Masaharu," Kate shouted. "Don't," but he was already moving. "Bash," he yelled down the stairs. "Ammunition." The boy's voice came back, tight with fear but clear. "In their room. Closet lockbox. Code 9769. Masaharu sprinted down the hall, the house trembling with each pulse from outside. He threw open the bedroom door, the air thick with dust, and dropped to one knee in front of the safe. His fingers moved faster than thought. 9769. The latch popped. He tore the box open and grabbed 3 magazines of high-velocity rounds, shoving them into his vest pockets. The next tremor knocked a photo frame from the wall, the image of Abby as a girl training with him, her stance too wide but her eyes fierce. He forced himself not to look. There was no time for memory. He returned to the front door just as the muted brown Spartor stepped into view again, closer now, maybe 50 yards away, the ground crunching beneath each slow, measured step. Masaharu dropped to one knee, brought the rifle to his shoulder, and fired. The pulse cracked through the air like a whip. The bolt of energy hit the SB, artery square in the abdomen, tearing a ragged hole in the matte armor. A viscous blue liquid oozed from the wound. The alien staggered back a single step, then straightened. It raised its arm again, this time in defense. The earth rippled, and a massive wall of packed soil and stone erupted between them, solid and seamless, blocking the next volley. He fired again, the bolt striking harmlessly against the barrier. Each pulse deflected or dissipated, leaving faint rings of melted glass where energy met mineral. The brown Spartor advanced behind his creation, completely unharmed. Masaharu's mind raced. They are using the planet itself as cover, manipulating it at will. He adjusted his aim and fired at the ground near the alien's feet, hoping to destabilize its footing. The pulse struck, scattering debris, but even the shockwave seemed absorbed into the structure of the shield. The alien paused briefly, as if evaluating him. Then, in a deep, resonant voice, it spoke guttural and sharp. "Connor Vathak." Masaharu didn't know the words, but he understood the tone. A declaration. The green commander gave a brief nod, and the brown Spartor raised both hands this time. The ground around the Odo residence rippled outward in concentric circles, the vibrations so strong they shattered the remaining windows. Masaharu retreated back toward the bunker entrance, his breathing steady but his heart hammering. He had bought them seconds, maybe less. He turned and slammed the bunker's heavy door shut, sealing the hatch. "Stay down there," he shouted through the metal. "Don't open it till you hear my voice." Bash's muffled reply came through. "Grandpa, what's happening?" Masaharu closed his eyes briefly, forcing calm into his voice. "Just stay quiet. Protect your sister. I'll handle this." He turned back toward the shattered remains of the living room. Dust swirled through the gaps in the walls. Outside, the low rumble of movement grew louder, the rhythmic impact of something immense walking through the wreckage. Masaharu reloaded the pulse rifle, chambering the next round with a sharp click. Then he stepped outside. The night was alive with flickering firelight and drifting ash. Across the torn street, the brown Spartor loomed 30 meters away. Beyond him, 2 more Spartors, dull blue and dull green, stood further back, their glowing eyes fixed on the scene as if judging a test. Masaharu raised his weapon, sighting down the barrel. His voice was low, a whisper to himself. "Let's see this thing bleed." He fired. The pulse hit true center mass. The Spartor's torso jerked back, a spray of glowing blue fluid spilling from the impact point. But the alien didn't fall. Instead, it turned toward him fully, massive and deliberate, and raised one arm. Chunks of the street lifted into the air, fractured concrete, twisted metal, shards of foundation orbiting Masaharu in a wide circle. The object spun faster and faster, forming a tightening ring of death. Masaharu crouched, his instinct screaming. He shifted position, firing again. Another shot connected, tearing through the Spartor's shoulder. Still, it kept advancing. Eyes locked on him. One massive hand, declenched midair. The ground shook as a low vibration rolled across the district. Then, cutting through the chaos, came the roar of approaching engines. A shuttle burst through the wall of dust, its running lights cutting sharp beams through the smoke. Kyle's voice echoed inside the cockpit. "I've got him, 100 meters ahead." Drake leaned over his shoulder. "Get us low. I want eyes on the target. Already there." Kyle banked the shuttle hard, thrusters flaring as they skimmed the fractured rooftops. Through the viewport, the scene came into full view: the brown Spartor towering before the ruined Ness house, the other two Spartors standing motionless farther off, watching like judges. And there, framed in the haze, Masaharu Odo stood alone, Abby's breath caught in her throat. "Dad, outside." Masaharu fired in quick, practice bursts, moving with the calm of experience. The Spartor barely reacted. It raised one arm slowly, and the fragments of shattered stone and debris around Masaharu lifted, circling him in a tightening orbit. Drake slammed his hand against the comm panel. "Central Command, where's my air support? District 07A is under attack. Only static." "Damn it," he barked. "Get us closer." Abby pressed to the window, voice cracking. "Dad, run." Masaharu turned at the sound of her voice. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second through the chaos. His expression softened, the same calm she'd seen in training fields and childhood storms. He nodded once. Then the brown Spartor clenched its fist. The air itself seemed to fold. The ring of hovering stones collapsed himward, a single, crushing implosion that turned the world silent. The ground caved, pavement liquefying under pressure. Abby screamed, "Dad!" When the dust cleared, there was only the shallow crater, black glass, twisted metal, and the faint shimmer of heat. Masaharu was gone. Kyle's breathing hitched, his face hardening as the cockpit lights strobed red. Drake's voice was sharp, commanding. "That thing needs to die." Kyle's knuckles tightened on the controls until they whitened. "Hold on." He shoved the throttles forward. "Wait, Kyle!" Abby shouted, her voice raw. But he didn't stop. The shuttle roared low, skimming the ground as it accelerated. "Get down." Drake didn't argue, only braced. "Hit him." The shuttle slammed forward, engines screaming. Its hull scraped the fractured street, sending sparks through the night. The brown Spartor turned just in time to see it coming. It planted its feet, massive hands rising to catch the oncoming machine. The impact was thunder. Metal shrieked as the shuttle struck the alien full on, the weight of the craft driving it backward in a storm of dust and shattered concrete. The Spartor pushed back with impossible strength, fingers gouging into the hull, but the shuttle's momentum was relentless. Kyle snarled, forcing the engines higher. "You killed him," he growled through clenched teeth. "You killed him." The Spartor's leg buckled. Blue fluid splattered across the windshield, hissing against the heat. The alien tried to rise, its arms trembling against the bulk of the ship. Then Kyle twisted the yoke, forcing the full weight of the shuttle down. The Spartor went under. There was a sound like mountains breaking and then stillness. The massive form lay crushed beneath the shuttle's landing skids, its chest caved inward, blue light flickering and fading beneath shattered armor. Kyle kept the nose pressed down for several long seconds, until the engines began to whine from overload. Only then did he pull back, lifting the shuttle half a meter off the ground. No movement, no life. Drake exhaled slowly. "Confirmed kill," he said, voice low, strained. Abby was trembling. She pressed her hand to the glass, eyes locked on the ruins below. "Dad," she whispered. Kyle hovered there, engines shaking, systems screaming warnings. "Hold together," he muttered, tapping the stabilizers. "Just a little longer." The shuttle CR, each butt stayed aloft. Around them, the base's defense systems began to stir, red lights flashing, automated turrets tracking targets. In the distance, the green Spartor raised its head, watching. The blue one stepped forward, analyzing. Neither moved to help their fallen companion. Drake turned toward the others, face like stone. "We stopped one. Don't mistake that for a win." Kyle set the shuttle down hard, the hull groaning under strain. Abby unbuckled and stood shakily, eyes fixed on the crater where her father had fallen. Kyle cut the engines. They stepped out into a night that no longer belonged to Earth. The air smelled of scorched metal, the stars above drowned in the glow of the still pulsing portal. Abby stared at the ruin of her home and the corpse of the creature that had destroyed her father. Her voice was barely a breath. "We're going to kill them all. Thank you for reading this chapter. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving a thumbs up leaving a positive review or a comment. It truly helps a debut author like myself. As this is my first novel, I am still learning, and I would love to hear your constructive feedback to help me improve. I'll do my best to reply to your comments. Run Doc Chapter 5. Shattered ground. Abby ran through the haze, choking the air, her lungs burning with the metallic tang of concrete dust. The ground still trembled beneath her feet, every vibration a reminder of the explosion that had swallowed her father whole. The crater was still glowing faintly, the soil fused into glass, reflecting shards of red and blue light from the emergency beacons overhead. She called his name, her voice breaking through static-filled air, but there was no answer, only the echo of her own panic. Dad! She stumbled forward, tripping over a section of collapsed walkway. Her palms tore open against the debris, but she pushed herself back up, staring into the pit. Nothing, no movement, only heat, distortion, and silence. The faint scent of scorched polymer and iron filled her nostrils. Her heart hammered as she scanned the wreckage again, desperate for any trace of him. A fragment of his rifle lay half buried in the dirt, the metal warped and fused into a single unrecognizable shape. She crouched beside it, fingers trembling as she reached out. It was still warm. Behind her, the night row arced to life again. Engines cut through the chaos, the shuttle's turbines still whining from strain. Drake's voice came over the comm, sharp and commanding through the interference. Abby, hit clear. That's an order. She didn't move, not until another explosion rolled through the air, shaking the ground hard enough to knock her backward. She forced herself to her feet, chest tight, throat raw. The glow in the distance was shifting green and blue light pulsing in slow rhythm, alive and deliberate. On the ridge, Drake and Ness had taken cover behind a broken section of wall that overlooked the Ness property. They were watching the battlefield in grim silence. The green Spartor, the largest of the three, was still standing near the crater, its armor glistening with faint luminescence. As it watched the sky, but the blue one had begun to move slowly, methodically, its gaze fixed on them. Contact, closing from the east, Ness muttered, eyes narrowing. He's tracking us. He's not tracking. He's choosing. Drake replied. They both watched as the creature's heavy steps crushed the pavement beneath its feet. It didn't charge. It advanced with the confidence of something that had never been challenged. The muscles along its shoulders flexed, armor plates shifting like living metal. Drake's jaw clenched. Let's see what these bastards are made of. Ness turned toward the remains of the house, his voice sharp. Abby, I need my emergency duffel bag. Now. She spun around immediately and sprinted toward the smoking structure. The front half of the home had collapsed inward. Glass and steel twisted into a mangled skeleton. Smoke poured through the cracks as sparks rained from the ceiling. She coughed hard, eyes watering, but pushed through the debris. The hallway was half caved in. She ducked beneath the fallen support beam, her shoulders scraping metal as she slid into the bedroom. Dust hung thick in the air. The ammunition safe lay empty. She dropped to her knees and reached under the bed, fingers brushing canvas. The duffel was still there, heavy, cold. Her pulse surged as she yanked it free, stumbling upright and sprinting back outside. Drake and Ness were already retreating toward her, empty-handed, their faces grim. The blue Spartor was less than 100 meters away now, its steps deliberate and unhurried. The street lights flickered as it passed, each bulb dimming in its wake. Abby skidded to a stop and tossed the duffel forward. Ness caught it mid-stride, snapping it open in one motion. The metallic glint of weaponry caught the fading light pulse rifles, fragmentation charges, compact launchers. His hands moved with the precision of habit, throwing one rifle to Drake and chambering a fresh power cell into his own. He glanced at Abby, voice calm but commanding. Find your mom and the kids. Go, now. Her throat tightened, but she nodded and turned away, sprinting toward the rear bunker entrance. Behind her, the firefight began. Drake crouched low behind the broken wall as Ness set up a firing line. The blue Spartor kept coming, its posture relaxed, as if testing their resolve. Drake took the first shot, the pulse bolt streaking across the night. It hit the Spartor center mass with a crack of light. The creature staggered slightly but didn't fall. The round left a shallow, glowing crater in its armor that began to seal almost instantly. Drake exhaled through his teeth, armor self-repairing. Ness didn't answer. He fired 3 quick bursts, aiming for the joints. One round caught the Spartor in the left arm, tearing a thin gash that leaked a faint, shimmering fluid. The alien paused, tilting its head slightly, as if studying the wound. Then it raised its right hand. At first, nothing happened. Then the air began to move. A faint, rippling shimmer passed over the street. Manhole covers rattled, then blew open. Water erupted upward, twisting in thin, serpentine streams. Bird baths shattered. Gutters bled. That moisture from every surface in a 100-meter radius began to lift, swirling toward the Spartor like smoke in reverse. Drake's eyes widened. What the hell? Ness adjusted his aim, disbelief on his face. He can control water. The streams coiled tighter around the alien's hand. For a moment, the liquid hovered in midair, swirling faster and faster. A storm condensed to a single point. Then the Spartor clenched its fist. The water solidified. In an instant, the fluid transformed into hundreds of crystalline shards, razor-edged spears of ice that glimmered under the light of the fires around them. Ness's voice dropped, grim. Worse, not only can he control it, he can make ice. The creature moved its arm in a single, deliberate arc. The frozen spear shot outward like gunfire, whistling G through the air. Drake dove behind the wall, shards slicing past him with the speed of bullets. One embedded itself in the concrete, hissing with residual energy that melted it halfway before refreezing. Ness rolled into cover beside him. We need to flank him before he pins us. Drake's expression hardened. You go left, I'll draw. He broke from cover, sprinting across the open street as another volley of ice shattered against the ground behind him. The Spartor tracked him immediately, turning with eerie smoothness, its glowing eyes narrowing. Drake fired mid-stride, pulse rounds slamming into its chest, shoulder, and leg. Each shot left small splashes of blue blood that froze on contact with air. Ness circled wide, sliding into a crouch behind a half-collapsed vehicle. He primed a grenade and tossed it underhand. The sphere bounced once and detonated with a low, concussive blast. The Spartor staggered, its balance disrupted. Drake seized the moment, charging forward. He slid beneath the creature's swing, brought the rifle up, and fired into the exposed joint beneath its arm. The shot tore through flesh and armor alike, sending fragments scattering. The alien roared, not with pain, but with fury, and slammed its fist into the pavement. The ground fractured outward in a ring of ice. Shards erupted from the soil, slicing the air like teeth. Drake threw himself back, narrowly avoiding a spike that would have impaled his leg. The Spartor stood tall again, the wound on its arm slowly freezing over. The fluid from its injury solidified instantly, sealing itself in sea. Bristol. It turned its head toward Ness and raised its arm again. Ness shouted, Drake, cover, and fired his launcher. The impact lit the night in a wash of plasma. The explosion threw both men backward, a wave of heat and sound washing over them. When the light faded, the Spartor was on one knee, its armor scorched and cracked. Steam hissed from its skin where ice and heat had collided. It looked almost human in that moment, breathing hard, bleeding, but still alive. Drake pushed himself up, vision swimming, still moving. Yeah, Ness muttered, reloading, but slower. They closed in from opposite sides. The creature sensed the maneuver and roared, voice deep and resonant like distant thunder. Its arm swept upward, pulling vapor from the very air, reforming a blade of ice nearly as long as a man. It swung it in a wide arc that sent frost cascading from the edge. Drake ducked low, countering with a volley of shots that blew chunks from the weapon's edge. Ness flanked behind, firing at the back of its legs. One knee buckled. The Spartor stumbled forward, balance broken. Drake lunged, slamming his shoulder into its side. The impact sent both of them sprawling into the debris. The alien lashed out with inhuman speed, backhanding him across the face. He fell hard, rolling to his side. The Spartor rose again, breathing raggedly, frost swirling around it in a living storm. Before it could strike again, Ness closed distance, sliding across the fractured pavement and driving a combat knife deep into the joint at its thigh. The alien snarled, the sound vibrating the groove. Indeed, beneath them, Ness twisted the blade hard, wrenching it free, and fired point blank into the wind. Blue light exploded outward. The Spartor convulsed once and fell to one knee. Its hand slammed into the ground, sending a final wave of freezing air radiating outward. The temperature dropped instantly, frost crawling across the rubble like living veins. Ness stepped back, breathing hard. That enough for you? The creature looked up at him, its eyes bright and yielding, and whispered something in its language. The sound was guttural, layered, like static merging with thunder. Then it reached toward its chest. Drake's instinct screamed, back now! A violent pulse of energy erupted from the Spartor's core, a shockwave of concussive force that tore across the street like a physical W. Both men were hurled backward, crashing through debris and tumbling across the fractured pavement. The blast shredded the surrounding frost, sending shards of ice and concrete spiraling through the air. Drake hit the ground hard, his head bleeding, ears ringing from the pressure wave. Ness landed beside him, skidding across gravel before slamming into a broken support beam. He rolled over, coughing, trying to focus through the haze. Through the settling dust, the Spartor silhouette reemerged. It was still kneeling, one hand braced on the ground, steam rising off its armor where the ice had sublimated to vapor. The glow in its chest flickered wildly, then steadied stronger than before. With a low, rumbling growl, the alien rose to its feet again. Cracks in its armor sealed her thin sheets of regenerating frost. Blue light pulsing in rhythm with its breathing. Ness wiped blood from his lip, eyes wide. You've got to be kidding me. Drake forced himself upright, gripping his rifle. It's regrouping. Move now. The Spartor straightened fully, head turning toward them, eyes burning with renewed fury. Each exhale came out as a cloud of freezing mist, spreading across the ground like a living storm. In the house, Abby reached the bunker. She pounded twice, then again, louder. Mom, it's me. The locking mechanism disengaged with a heavy click. The reinforced door creaked open, light spilling through the narrow seam. Kate stood inside, her face pale but steady, Emily clutched close against her side. Behind her, Bash was crouched over a small pile of scavenged metal rods and knives, makeshift throwing weapons he clearly assembled from the workshop. His hands trembled, but his jaw was set. Abby stepped in and sealed the door behind her. They are outside, she said, trying to steady her breathing. Drake and Ness are holding them off. Kate nodded once, already assessing. The children, they're fine. Abby's eyes darted to Bash's improvised arsenal. What's that? He looked up. I'm ready, he said quietly, just in case. Emily clung tighter to Kate, her small voice breaking the silence. Where's Grandpa? Abby froze. Her throat worked, but no sound came. She forced herself to meet her mother's eyes. Kate already knew the answer. The two women stood there for a heartbeat, neither speaking, both holding the same grief in silence. Then the air, shook again. The lights flickered. The battle outside was still raging. Kate pulled the children closer. Abby turned to the viewing slit and looked out. Through the narrow window, the night was alive with motion, streaks of light, bursts of fire, and the towering silhouettes of soldiers against something that shouldn't exist. The world had changed in a single night, and there was no going back. She pressed her hand to the glass, the faint tremor of another distant explosion echoing through her fingertips. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Come on, Drake. Come on, Kyle. Outside, the ice storm began to fade. The green Spartor, silent until now, turned slowly toward the battlefield, its gaze falling upon the fallen blue warrior. The air around it began to vibrate again, deep and rhythmic, the promise of something far worse approaching. Thank you for reading this chapter. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving a thumbs up, leaving a positive review or a comment. It truly helps a debut author like myself. As this is my first novel, I am still learning, and I would love to hear your constructive feedback to help me improve. I'll do my best to reply to your comments. Run Da.